Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm continuing my J.G. Ballard series again, which I'm going to get heavily into for a while because I really love Ballard, and I'm getting into a lot of his more interesting works now in the 1960s. And today I want to talk about the next in my bibliography for J.G. Ballard, number 24, titled The Insane Ones, which was published in Amazing Science Fiction in January of 1962. At this time, Amazing had been taken over by, her name's escaping me, but it was a woman editor, and she was publishing a lot of authors that would become prominent in the 1960s, especially with the new wave. She was publishing people like Ellison and Ballard, Le Guin, Zelazny, Aldous. She was publishing a lot of their early stories in the early 1960s. Celie Goldsmith, I believe, is the name of the editor. The Insane Ones was published the same month as the last Ballard story, The Drowned World. The short version of The Drowned World came out in the British science fiction magazine Science Fiction Adventures that month, and the book publication of his first novel, The Wind from Nowhere, was released in January of 1962. So this was a big month for Ballard fiction to be released. Some very groundbreaking early work by Ballard hit the newsstands and bookstores. The Insane Ones has quite a good publishing history. It was obviously published in Amazing, as I said. It was in his first short story collection, also published sometime in 1962, titled Millennium, which I do have a copy of around here somewhere. It's not handy, so I can't hold it up. I read The Insane Ones in his complete short stories, which is a great book and an essential book for the Ballard collector. Really, really excellent book. Almost everything short is in here. One that is missing is The Drowned World, but I think I think Ballard preferred the novel length version of that over the short version. The short version, I'm not sure yet. I got to read the novel yet, but the short version may actually have been an excerpt from the novel that he was working on. So that isn't considered a short story really, and isn't in the complete short stories of J.G. Ballard. But aside from some unusual outliers like that, this book is absolutely complete, and it's a great book. Out of print now. It was published when Ballard was still alive. I have found copies online, easy to find and not too much money. The Insane Ones was also collected by Martin H. Greenberg and Isaac Asimov in their anthology, the 24th volume of the Great SF Stories that they published, which, if I recall correctly, that was the last one that was published before Asimov died. And that volume covered the best of 1962. So Asimov and Greenberg felt that The Insane Ones was one of the very best stories of 1962 and included it in their anthology series. Basic premise, without going into too much detail and spoiling it for you, the basic premise is you have a near future world, which is what Ballard preferred. He preferred near future, and he preferred settings on Earth rather than far future or alien worlds. He felt Earth was alien enough and was more interesting. And so that's what his fiction focused on most of the time. He did write a couple early stories that were far future and alien worlds, but most of his stories were set near future on Earth. But would do things like this story did, which is pure science fiction, but it's very interesting because it's not It's not physics, it's not astronomy, it's not computers, robots. It's dealing with the science of psychology. And in particular, a political group seizes power in the United States and passes a law against anybody being forced to receive psychiatric treatment. Now, in 1962, there were a lot of things that we consider bad practice going on in psychiatry and in asylums. There was still lobotomies going on. There was still a lot of very questionable things, shock treatments and stuff like that, which these days are frowned upon in preference for drugs, which I'm not sure that's any better. But a law is passed that takes away anybody's ability to forcefully lock up and receive treatment somebody who is found to be um, what we would define as insane or affected by psychological issues, which sometimes you can. Somebody can be considered to be criminally insane and forced, instead of putting into jail for their crimes, forced to go into psychiatric treatment where they're essentially still in jail, but they receive treatment from psychiatrists. But this law basically outlaws psychiatry, in effect, and forces all psychiatrists to be seen as quacks. And it kind of spreads around the world, though there are places in the world where they can get away from the law. And so the main character, I forget his name, Dr. Gregory, I wrote it down this time. He's an ex psychiatrist who went to prison for a while for trying to help a young woman after this law was passed. And she turned out to be the daughter of one of the high up officials in this new government. So he became very famous for what he did and for breaking the law, and went to prison for a while. He's now served his time and he's out of prison, and he's been traveling around the world. And at the beginning of the story, he's traveling through North Africa, and he runs into a woman who starts talking to him. And turns out this woman is a psychiatric case who is trying to get him to help her. But of course, if he does anything by way of psychiatric help for this woman, even just talking to her, he could get arrested and thrown in prison again. Very interesting premise for the story. Very much science fiction, but like I say, not typical science fiction. This is the new kind of science fiction that came up in the 1950s and went even further in the 1960s, which focused on the soft sciences, psychiatry, sociology, economics, um, government, political science, things like that, that are called the soft sciences. It was a very good story. I wouldn't, I don't, I don't know what else was up against it in 1962 to say that it was one of the very best of 1962. It could be. Maybe it was a slow year, but I wouldn't call it a top tail quite. Um, but it was very good. It wasn't far below top tail quality. It was still it's definitely a very good science fiction story. Definitely one of Ballard's better stories, and so it's recommended pretty much to anybody to read it. It's a good short story. It's an excellent short story. So anybody that loves Ballard should read it. Anybody that loves early 1960s science fiction should read it. Anybody that's interested in psychiatry should read it. It's good. It's worth it. It's worth your time. So recommended, but not quite up there for me. I think Ballard did write better works than the insane ones myself. So, have you read The Insane Ones? What did you think of it? Do you think it's great enough to be in the Great SF Stories volume? Or do you agree with me that in thinking that, well, yeah, really good, but there were other really good things from that year? Leave your comments in the comments section. I'd love to hear them. Also, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and come on back for a lot more Ballard. The next one in my bibliography of J.G. Ballard is The Garden of Time, which is another very well-known story by Ballard. Come back for that and all the other videos by all the other authors that we do here on Telltale Books.